Welcome to another edition of Dad's Divorce Live. I'm Matt Allen, editor of DadsDivorce.com. Today we're joined by Michael Taylor, who is the author of the book, A New Conversation with Men. Michael is also a spiritual coach who helps men overcome negative social stigmas and become better husbands and fathers. You can learn more about Michael and his book by visiting his website, CoachMichaelTaylor.com. So Michael, thanks for joining me.
It's a pleasure, Matt. Glad to be here.
Now, I noticed on your website, in an overview you do of your chapters, that the book starts out talking about how you were living the American dream, and as you say, it turned into the American nightmare. So can you explain what happened and how it changed your life?
Well, let's go back about 20 years, and as mentioned, I was living the so-called American dream. I had the house, the wife, the 2.5 kids, and the vacations, and had climbed the corporate ladder, and by society standards, I was successful.
Sure.
And within a 6-year period, I watched that dream turn into a nightmare as I went through a divorce, a bankruptcy, a foreclosure, and I actually ended up losing everything. And amazingly, during the darkest period of my life, I had this epiphany. And it came to me in the form of a question. One night, probably 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm sitting there and again, deeply depressed, really frustrated with life, very confused about what was going on. Mm-hmm. And as I looked at my bookshelf across the room, I noticed that all of the books had something to do with making money. And then this question popped in my head, and it said, what if you took the same energy and effort you used in trying to get rich and simply learn to be happy? And that one question, what if I took that energy to learn to be happy, changed everything for me. Because then I was no longer focused on trying to accumulate stuff. I decided that I needed to look within myself to figure out what it was about Michael Taylor that needed to change in order for me to be happy. And so that led me to this amazing journey of transformation in which I have spent literally hundreds of hours doing workshops and seminars and reading books and listening to tapes. And I can finally say and honestly say that at this particular point in my life, I am happier now than I've ever been.
That's great. You talk about this book starting a revolution. How will it do that?
Well, it is my belief that one of the greatest challenges we have in our society is to redefine masculinity. And in order to redefine masculinity, we have to create what I call a new paradigm. And my definition of a paradigm is a rigid way of believing, thinking, and behaving. And so for men, we have to be willing to challenge some of our beliefs about what it means to be a man. And when we challenge those beliefs, we then challenge our thoughts. And then our thoughts change and challenge our actions. And so the general media showcases men as deadbeat dads, always responsible for relationship breakups, as though we're always the bad guys. Mm-hmm. And so the question is, how can men come together to support each other, to move past the negative media stereotypes and empower each other to become better husbands, better fathers, better friends? And that's what this conversation is about. It's about letting men know, first and foremost, that we are not alone. See, that's the problem with us as men. When we go through divorce or go through trying times, the first thing we generally do is isolate ourselves. And what I'm saying is, guys, look, we have got to come together, support each other, and recognize that you're not the only guy that's going through this. There is light at the end of the tunnel, but let me show you some things that I've learned that has helped me get there. And so that's how this revolution is starting. I'm simply sharing the lessons and insights that I've learned to assist other men in getting to this same place of being completely, genuinely happy with their lives, as I mentioned earlier.
Now, you mentioned the deadbeat dad, and there are other negative social stigmas out there that are attached to men and husbands that seem to be so prevalent in the media. So what advice do you have for men trying to overcome these negative stereotypes that are out there?
Well, the key is always to be willing to look within, because we can focus all of our attention on what the media says and what the society is saying. But as men, we have to be honest and courageous with ourselves to look within to see, what is it about me that I can change so that I can become genuinely happy with my life? Because the media is going to show you all the negative aspects of not only men, but of society in general. So what we have to be willing to do is be courageous enough to say, you know what, maybe I don't know. And that simple question, if we can say to ourselves, I don't know, it opens the door for us to know, to learn, and to grow. And so what this conversation is doing is it's challenging men to grow. We have to be courageous enough to recognize that we can change our lives. Our lives can be improved, but we have to be willing to do the work. And the work entails us to stop blaming our ex-wives, stop blaming society, stop blaming people, look within ourselves and say, what can I change about me so that I can be genuinely happy with my life? And that's what my books and my seminars help men do. Ask that question and then provide some answers to some of those questions.
Now, you have a chapter on the 5 illusions of manhood, and one of them is that men are non-emotional and disconnected, and sort of what you were just talking about. So how do you reach those guys out there who aren't emotional or maybe, you know, aren't receptive or willing to be able to go on this sort of internal journey of discovery?
Well, we have to do exactly what we're doing now, Matt, which is have a dialogue, because the dialogue creates the men's interest in this conversation, because although men may be hesitant to engage in this work, when you start dialoguing, and when I go and I speak to men's groups and I start talking about some of these things, I mean, it's universal. Men struggle with the same issues. We just don't talk about them. And in those 5 illusions, which you just mentioned, the first illusion is, as you mentioned, the illusion that to be a man, you must be non-emotional and disconnected. And I say that is the foundation of all of the pain and suffering in our lives. Because as men, from a very early age, we're taught and conditioned that we aren't supposed to feel. So we start suppressing and repressing our emotions, and then we wonder why our life spirals out of control. It's because we have been disconnected from our hearts. We try to process everything through our intellect. We think we're in love, when in reality we should feel what love is. So what we have to do is be courageous enough to talk about it, to just be honest and say, look, I know what it feels like to go through a divorce, and the pain and the disappointment and the fear and the anger and the frustration, and know that it's okay to express whatever is there for us. Because if we don't express it, we bottle it up, and then guess what? It starts affecting our next relationship. Mm-hmm. So men have to be willing to engage in this, no matter how uncomfortable it might make them at the beginning. It will open the door for them to really be truly happy with their lives.
Well, finally, you mentioned earlier how you've been advised that men may be hesitant to buy this book. So why should they buy this book? Why should they go out and read A New Conversation with Men?
Well, there's one simple question that a man needs to ask himself, and that is, am I genuinely happy with my life? Now, if someone would have asked me that question 20 years ago when I was married, and I would have answered yes. I would have said, yeah, I've got it all together. But the truth was, I was in complete denial, and I didn't want to admit it. But intuitively, I knew there were some issues. I knew that there was problems with my marriage that I was too afraid to address. I knew that something was wrong, but I didn't know what that was. So when a man can ask themselves that question, am I genuinely happy with my wife, meaning, are my relationships fulfilling and rewarding? Do I have good financial health? Do I have good physical health? Do I have a spiritual connection that really nurtures my spirit? When a man can answer yes to those questions, then he can be genuinely happy. But the question is, are you going to be courageous enough to take the first step to provide the questions? Because I can't give you all the answers, but I can give you some great questions that will help you move to getting to that place where you can say, I am genuinely happy with my life.
Michael, I want to thank you again for joining me.
Hey, man, it's been a real pleasure. And again, I think you guys are doing wonderful work, because I know back some 20 years ago when I went through my divorce, I didn't have the resources. So, again, I want to commend you for the work that you guys are doing, because it's important for men to have these types of resources as we go through what I would consider one of the most difficult challenges in our lives, which is divorce.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you joining with us. That is Michael Taylor. You, again, can find out more information about him and order his book, A New Conversation with Men, by visiting his website, CoachMichaelTaylor.com. That'll do it for this edition of Dad's Divorce Live. I'm Matt Allen, editor of DadsDivorce.com.